Hello, everybody. I know I don't have none of the fancy bells and whistles today, but that's okay. We're going to do the best with what we got. I got a little bit of a late start this evening on this, but it's ready to go nonetheless. It is Resurrection Sunday, and gosh, I am so excited. Um, I know if you went to church this morning, you heard that the tomb is empty. And if you watch church online or whatever the case may be, you heard that the tomb is empty. And the tomb is empty. But I want to talk about something you may never heard of before. That's still an Easter topic. But again, I don't have none of the fancy bells and whistles today. But my title is called The Folded Napkin. I know they don't make no sense. And that's good. It's not supposed to make any sense. But my title's called The Folded Napkin. Alright. Now, I want you to picture this. Peter and John have just run to the tomb, and John gets there first. But Peter, being Peter, does not slow down. He does not hesitate. He walks straight in. And when he gets inside, he sees something very strange. We're talking about going into the tomb here. He doesn't see that just Jesus is gone. He sees that Jesus is gone, but how things are left behind. The Bible says that linen cloths were laying there. But the cloth that had been around Jesus' head was not thrown to the side. It wasn't crumpled up in the corner. It wasn't tossed like something was done and finished. It was folded. Now hold on, that may not make any sense, because if somebody stole the body, they don't stop and fold the cloth. If enemies came in a rush, they don't pause to organize the linen. If death had won, there would be chaos, not order. But sitting right there in the empty tomb was a quiet, intentional detail. The napkin was folded. Now, let me take you somewhere. In ancient Jewish culture, when a servant set the table for a master, the servant would stand back and wait. And when the master was finished eating, he had two options. If he was done or completely finished, he would have wad up the napkin and throw it on the table to show that he was done. That told the servant, it's over, clean it up. But if the master got up from the table and folded the napkin, that meant something very, very specific. It means I'm not finished. I'm going to come back. Whoa now. Now, I wish somebody would just get a little piece of this. Because Easter ain't just about an empty tomb. It's about a folded napkin. Jesus didn't leave the grave in a rush. He didn't leave in a panic. He didn't leave in defeat. He got up with his power, took his time, and folded the cloth. Why? Because he's sending a message without saying anything. He's saying, I'm not finished yet. Now, okay, let's hit a different topic. You thought God might have been finished in your life. You thought that your situation might have been over. You thought that the door was closed for good. You thought that failure was wrote in the final chapter. But Easter is God's way of saying to you, I'm not finished yet. That folded napkin is a message to every person who feels like it's over, to the one who's ready to quit, to the one who's buried in the dream, to the one who stopped praying about it. God said, I stepped out, but I ain't done. I'm just out for a little bit. And that's something powerful. The miracle was not loud. There was no big kaboom that happened. There was no trumpet that blasted. There was no crowd shouting yet. No choir was singing. It was just a folded cloth in a tomb. Sitting in silence, declaring victory. Because sometimes God doesn't always shout. Sometimes He might whisper. And if you're not careful, you'll miss what God is trying to say. Because you're waiting on something loud while He's leaving you in quiet evidence. Now, I'm going to make it plain. That peace you sometimes can't always explain. That strength you didn't have last week, that door that opened out of nowhere, that might be your folded napkin. God is saying, I'm still working. I'm still moving. I'm still not finished. And here is the big picture. If he hasn't finished with the grave, had his folded napkin, if he wasn't finished with the grave, he's not finished with you and I. If death could not stop him, your situation or what you may be going through can't stop him either. If your cross, if his cross wasn't the end, your struggle ain't the end. And that's a big thing right there. So before the sun even fully came up, before the world knew what happened, before the announcement spread, there was already a message waiting in the tomb. I'm coming back. Okay, that's not just resurrection talk. That's promise talk, because one day the same Jesus who got up out of that grave is going to come back again. We know that. So I don't care what it may look like right now. I don't care how dark it may be. I don't care how long you might have been waiting. You don't mistake silence for absence. You can't mistake a delay for sometimes denial. And don't you ever think God is done with anybody's story just because there's a folded napkin in your life somewhere. It's just proof that he ain't finished yet. If you believe, sometimes you got to lift your hands, open your mouth, and give God praise, because the grave is empty, the cloth is folded, and he's still working. That's pretty much all I got. I didn't plan on being very long. I just wanted some people to get a different perspective on something. That you got a folded napkin. Sometimes the fact that folded napkin sitting in there was always just shoved by. He just want, like, we're supposed to do things decently in order, so he folded the napkin. But that's not always the case. But that's all I got. It was very short. But happy Easter. I hope you have an amazing Easter, and I will see y'all later.